Please support the official release. Buy comics. What's up, YouTube? It's me, Super Moon Mario Comics, and I'm here bringing you The Walking Dead number 149 summary and review. This issue starts right where the last one ended, with Rick coming down to Negan's cell for a talk. Negan automatically assumes that Rick is going down there to release him and tell him to kill somebody, and Rick disappoints Negan by telling him that he's just there to talk and that Negan is never getting out of that cell. So Negan, disappointed, sits down to see what Rick has to say. The comic then shifts to Dwight having a talk with Laura, and Dwight is basically saying that he has to leave there because he doesn't like the look that Dane gave him. I'm assuming it's pronounced Dane. And Laura's trying to convince him that the survivors need him, that without Dwight's leadership, the survivors might just go back to the way that they were when Negan was leading them, and that they could even storm Alexandria like how Negan wanted to do when he was the leader 2 years ago. And that she's saying that Dwight has a lot of responsibility as their leader to stay with them and to guide them. And Dwight insists that he can't be there, and Laura explains to him that the reason why he won't be there is because of Dane. And she goes on to say that Danny is a terrible person who was with him, and then at the first sign of trouble kicked him to the curb, and that when Negan offered her safety and luxury, that she just took it, and that Negan didn't have to force her all to do it. She just took it because it was better for her, and that Negan might have scared her a little, and that she eventually went back to Dwight when Dwight was protecting her, and because she knew Dwight would save her, and that she may have been grateful, but being the terrible person that she is, she would just leave Dwight like she's right now. And she goes on to say that Dwight deserves someone who will be with him, someone that will appreciate him for who he is. And she goes on to kiss him and says that she's here for him and that she does appreciate him, and that she basically has feelings for Dwight, but Dwight still insists that he has to leave. The comic then shifts to Andrea, Carl, and Lydia arriving at the Hilltop and being greeted by Eduardo. Andrea says that they're just visiting and tells Eduardo that if anyone comes looking for them, to deny that they're here and to go and find her, to give her enough time to do something for when they actually eventually find her. And Eduardo just says, okay. So then Carl and Lydia are having a talk in which Lydia apologizes for pulling a gun on Andrea, and Carl apologizing for pulling a gun on her, and explaining that he understands what she's going through and that he has to earn her trust, and that they're not at that point in their relationship yet where they can completely trust each other. And Lydia goes on to say that thank you for understanding, and Carl goes on to say that the reason he is the way he is because of his dad, and that he wants to grow up to become a person like his dad where people can look up to him when he's around that age. And Lydia says that he's already reached that point, in fact that he's already become a better person than his father, and that she has trouble trusting people after not being able to trust anyone basically her entire life due to being in the Alpha's camp, and realizes that Carl does not deserve that level of suspicion that she would give to a normal person or stranger. So we get a look on with Maggie playing of Herschel, having a conversation about whether it's still safe for them to be there, and Maggie's explaining that we're going to have to come up with a plan and that we're going to have answers, and they're basically debating that that's not where the real potential danger is with the conversation they're going to have with the people and the problems that Rick is having obviously with the Alpha, but it's if the people don't like the answers that they're planning to give them. Then we see a scene with Eugene trying to get a radio to work, and it actually ends up working, but it seems like nothing's picking up, and Eugene starts to cry. The comic then shifts back to Rick having a conversation with Negan, in which Negan asks Rick, "Are you stupid?" I'm not going to narrate the curse words. And Rick says, "Excuse me." And then Negan says, "I'm asking you an honest question. I'm being serious. Are you stupid? Take a seat and listen to what I'm about to say, because I have to point some things out to you." And then Rick says that I don't have any time for games or anything like that. And Negan says that he's being dead serious. And so Nick decides to grab a chair and hear him out. So Negan decides to try and spit what he calls a baby bird wisdom to Rick, saying, you have to pay attention to this question I'm about to ask you when dealing with the Whisperers. And he asks Rick if he's ready, and Rick says that he's ready. And what Negan asks Rick is that, "Are they you?" And Rick gets fed up and decides to just walk out of the conversation. And Negan says, "So you weren't paying attention." So Negan tries to get Rick to understand, saying that you have to hear me out. Let's assume they're not you. They're not your people. They're not the proverbial us. What would that mean? That they would fall squarely into the category of them. And that actually stops Rick, because Rick starts to realize what Negan is actually saying. So Negan repeats his first question, "Are you stupid?" And Rick answers this time with a, "No, Negan, I'm not stupid." And Negan asks Rick, "Why are you so worried about your leader of men, and you're worried that your people are turning against you when you have me sitting right here in your lap and you could use me?" And Negan says that a lot of times leaders have to make stuff up to keep their own people in line, that they have to make certain things into a better us versus them situation, which it's me or you situation, in which you basically have to unify your people under one cause. And you're basically fighting lunatics who are dressed like walkers. And that's a no-brainer. And that from a leader to a leader, from him to Rick, it's plain and simple what he has to do. And then Rick says that his people are calling for action, and that blind action could get a lot of innocents killed. And Negan says that your people aren't calling for action, your people are just calling for security. They want to know that they're safe, and because they feel unsafe, they're freaking out. And so you should give them something to make them feel comfortable, to shut them up, basically. And Rick is saying that you want me to lie to my own people. And then Negan says that the real reason why Rick is there, is because of the fact that Negan knew how to keep people in line and keep them loyal even if they didn't like him. For the most part, except in a situation of Dwight, in which Negan saw Dwight as a threat, and so he kept pushing Dwight, hoping that would keep him down. But instead, him pushing Dwight actually caused Dwight to turn against him and flip to Rick's side. And he says that you don't have to lie to them because you feel like you'd be misleading them. You have to tell them whatever it takes to keep your people feeling like they're safe no matter what. And that's what being a leader is, even if it means bashing some nice Asian kids' brains in just to maintain the status quo. And obviously Negan is talking about Glenn, and he can see he pushed a button by looking at Rick's face, and he says, "I get it, it's too soon." And then he says, "Now who's stupid?" Negan goes on to say that you don't have to outright lie to your people. What I was pointing out for you is the truth of the situation. And at the worst part, Rick would just be manipulating them, using like a half truth. But at the end of the day, whatever keeps the most people alive is whatever keeps the most people alive, and what's really the harm in that? So Rick says that he can work with that, and Negan is actually surprised that Rick is going to take his advice, and he goes on to joke around saying if this earns him anything like a walk in the park or a special meal or even some favors, and he just goes on to smile. So then it shifts to Vincent talking with his wife Julia, and Vincent is very upset at Rick. And Julia asks, what are you going to do? Rick is the one who is keeping us safe right now. Rick is the reason why we're still here. And Vincent is very angry because during this entire outbreak of the walkers, one of the things that's been keeping him sane is keeping his son Josh alive, making sure he grew up to become a man and a good person in this world, and that despite everything that was happening, that idea of making his son grow up to be a good contributing member of society is what helped keep him sane. And that even though he knows it's unreasonable, he still has this anger in him, and to the point that he actually pulls hands on his wife and then apologizes for it and says that he has this big pit and that he's so angry and sad and that he can't help but blame someone for it, and it just happens to be Rick because Rick's the leader. And then he gets some unexpected visitors. So then it goes back to Rick, and he's talking to Eugene about whether he got the radio to work or not. And Eugene says that it's useless, that even though the radio works, no one is out there. And so Rick tells Eugene he wants to talk to him. And so Rick says to Eugene that he has a plan, but he wants to get Eugene's input on it first. And Eugene automatically asks if they're going to hurt the Alpha's camp, the Whisperers, and Rick says, yes, we always were, and now we have a plan. And he says that he started working out a plan, and he wants to hear Eugene's opinion on it, and he thanks Eugene for actually starting the plan without even realizing it. And Eugene asks Rick what he's talking about, and Rick mentions the ammunition factory and that they had been stockpiling weapons and ammo for months on end, saving them for a rainy day, and it's about to start raining. Rick then tells Eugene that he's going to build up a military for their respective communities, and that for the Hilltop and for Alexandria, he's going to pick people and train them in the arts of war for when they eventually do go to battle with the Whisperers.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my god, stop fucking lying.
And that the Whisperers won't know what happens, won't know what hit them when their military will go over and basically wipe them out. So then it goes back to Dwight, and Dwight is packing up his stuff because he's going to leave. He's going to quit being a leader of the survivors, and he goes into his closet and he grabs out Lucy, Negan's bat. So I'm going to end this comic on a picture of the next issue, The Walking Dead number 150, which will be on sale in January 2016. So this is the last Walking Dead comic of this year, obviously. So what did you guys think of this comic? I actually liked it a lot. Obviously the return of Lucy is a major thing that's going to be in the comics when it comes back next year. About what is Dwight really going to do, and even Negan mentioned Dwight. So is Dwight maybe going to go over and try to kill Negan? What's going to happen with Rick's advice from Negan about lying to his own people? With the military itself, who is going to go after or looking for Andrea at the Hilltop? How is Maggie going to be accepted when they give her answers to her own people? So I like this comic. It's building up a lot of things forward the next year, a lot of plot lines that can be filled. Only disappointment is that there's no mention of the Alpha, but I think that's intentional. They'll save that later down in the next year for probably when they get stuff rolling around these people, then they'll show some stuff with the Alpha. Maybe Lydia becomes a double agent and gives information out to the Alpha, and they start preparing for war. There's a lot of interesting potential things, and that's why I like this comic, because it keeps you guessing. That's a great thing in the comic. Comics should be designed where you can easily tell what's going to happen next, unless it's something cool, you know, like with Negan and Rick. But as far as plot lines go, it should be interesting enough to keep your attention, and this comic definitely was. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, leave a like, and I respond to feedback constantly, and I give this comic a thumbs up. Have a great day.